I want to tell you about something. I want to tell you why my kids aren't going to be slaves. Alright? I want you to listen just a little bit here. School, TV, diet, prayer. Now let's talk about school. In school, you're pretty much in an internment camp, alright? You can't pursue what you want to pursue. You don't have any ability to say, hey teacher, I'm interested in this type of mechanics. I really want to know about mechanical engineering. I want to know how you can use materials in physics to manufacture devices. I'm kind of more of an analog guy. And my grandpa has these cool devices, you know what I mean? Like lawnmowers and stuff that blah blah blah. You get my point. You say, okay, well yeah, maybe we can do that, but you can't do that in school. You can't. But yeah, if you're not in school, you can say, hey grandpa, why don't you tell me how to tinker around on this engine, you know what I mean? You can say, oh, maybe he even has like a little bladeless thing. You can see how that thing spins and whirls and all the rest of it. You can't do that in public education. You can't even go take a piss. Excuse me. Are you free? Are you going to be a free individual when you're tortured by not being able to relieve yourself? When you have to eat crummy food at lunch? I mean, give me a break. You're in a prison system. That's not how you raise free people. There's just no chance of it. There's hardly a chance of it. There's a little bit of a chance. But you're getting better and better at this stuff anyway. Just look at pre-education, pre-public mandatory education journals of kids, students, their curriculum. It's astounding. It's absolutely astounding how advanced they are. You're talking about like 8th graders, 9th graders at college levels. Okay, and you can look at other things. We're getting less intelligent with time. There's a bunch of reasons for that, but part of it's education. A large part of it. I mean, you can't have a free mind when your mind is being, slammed into this model which doesn't let you make connections between disciplines. It doesn't encourage it. It doesn't care. It actually divides them up like a carcass of Frankenstein. You get this formaldehyde off this thing, you shake it up and you slice it, and this is education. This is social studies, this is math, this is your physics, and then but that's not life. You know why that's not life? Because it's dead, and we're in a living world. Alright, and we're living people. And we don't think like that. We don't operate like that. You can't make a pen or anything and have it not affect the rest of the human experience. It's impossible. Alright, it's just completely retarded if you actually think about it for 2 seconds. You're telling me that you can boil down a a spoon down to chemistry and middle. No, it's about way more than that. Who invented it? What was their culture? What was their tradition at the time? What were their beliefs? Whatever. What did people used to eat with? Anything. It's going to have these other effects. A lot of these things are immaterial, right? If you're trying to tell me that you're going to free a mind by imprisoning it into an educational system which teaches only materialism, you're out of your mind. You're insane. It's just, how could you do that? Sometimes people get through, but it's by grace or a mistake or something. It's clearly not, because of the system. It's what it really boils down to in a lot of ways is that the greatest joy of academics, of understanding, of learning, why do we care? Why do we think it's awesome when we figure something out? Why? Because it gets us a little closer to God, the divine mind of God, which runs through everything. There's nothing which isn't under the scope, the purview of God's eye. Everything is connected in that sense. Alright? It's not connected because you took mushrooms. No. Well, God made mushrooms. That's another story. You develop a free mind by letting that mind exercise freedom. It's that simple. It's that simple. You make virtues by practicing virtues. There's nothing free about the education system. You're not free even when you homeschool to choose your curriculum. You're not free to set your own standards about what you want your kid to learn. You know what I mean? Because I think the standards are kind of pathetic, to be honest. I do. Alright, let's talk a little bit about TV. My kids aren't going to be watching TV. And what does TV do to the mind? It conditions it to associate comfort with a viewing experience, to associate that comfort with advertisements. And then that runs throughout the whole life of an individual. They realize that, well, they don't realize this, but what happens is that they have this association constantly, right? And then you become a slave to advertisements, to be influenced by things you don't really influence. You don't realize you're being influenced, right? The worldviews of all these television shows, the movies, whatever. You're completely, like, your frame of thinking becomes more and more and more so romantic that you can't see what's before your very eyes. All right, it's essentially that instead of like looking at the world, you have this veil become thing, and this veil of TV producers and all the things that they believe and everything else, and then you're trying to like perceive your world through these things. I mean, because it's one thing to watch things when you're an adult, but when you're still like calibrating your brain and figuring out what's real and what's not real, and you put into these, I'd say, like vicious like cycles of like, I'm watching all this stuff and then I'm not doing something and I'm watching it or whatever. It doesn't work for developing a free mind. It works for developing a mind that's been trained to behave in certain ways. It's just, it's just pretty much mind control, brainwashing. I mean, people say it all the time, but it really is. And then it trains you how to think about yourself, the dreams you have. Oh, I have this dream, I have this, blah, blah, blah. No, you watch it on a television show. You're a pigeon. You see something, you see it enough times, and you hear from other people. And then, this is my thought, this is my thought. This is my original idea, this is my dream. I'm going to do this, and everyone tells you that. Well, why? Why do you think that? It doesn't have anything to do with the 50 movies you saw. It kind of had that as a theme, but it doesn't have anything to do with all the people you saw that also saw those movies and now tell you it's a good idea. No, not done at all like that, you know what I mean? And what happens with that, it becomes like a cocoon. It insulates you from the harsh realities of not being prepared for life. So you're kind of in this like weird dynamic, just like you were in a kid. Like, here's the world, here's the world, here's the TV. And it's just like your whole perception is skewed for your entire life, all right? And then you still want to chase these dreams. Why? Maybe because you're not a free person, you're not educated, you don't know what to do with yourself. And that hurts. So you need a barrier. You need something to like lift up your spirits, because otherwise you feel like freaking road salt or something. Tar in somebody's shoe. It's like, I'm not smart. I'm not beautiful like that person in the movie. I'm not special talented. You know what I mean? It's abuse. Low-grade abuse. All right? And then all the other sexual stuff, like, do blah, blah, blah. But then next thing you know, and it's already happening, it's like everything's softcore pretty much. Standards are gone, and now you're addicted to your passions, and sex sells, right? Even on that level, like, are you a slave when you're dishing out things that you don't really need just because your mind's like twisted? No. All right, and then diet. Are you gonna be a free person? Am I gonna raise free children by feeding them slave gruel? Generally speaking, no. It's just, to me, that's very simple. It's you need a brain to be able to be free. That's a verb. To be free, and your brain, it's made of saturated fat, cholesterol, all right, and a lot like your bone structure and everything, and it really depends on like breastfeeding and the amount of like fat soluble vitamins you have in the womb, which what your mother eats and everything, and what you eat growing up, and these things totally set like your whole your cheekbones and everything, and also like the nasal passage, which will determine how much headroom you got up there, which does affect things. It's kind of crude, but yes, people with bigger brains are typically more intelligent. All right, it's not exact. It doesn't always go that way, but you got to work with whatever you can. You know what I mean? Oh, there's so much more than that. Metabolism and everything else, but brain food, meat is brain food. It really is. All right, B vitamins and all that. You need it. Iodine for your central nervous system. Kids, they say sometimes 15 IQ points. That sounds crazy. It can't be 15 IQ points, but they say that. They say like 5 to 7 just for a mother eating one egg during pregnancy. One egg. You know what I mean? Like, what if you're Rocky Balboa there? Go to the raw egg. That's what my wife did. But either way, that's part of it. That's why my kids aren't going to be slaves, And then prayer, ultimately. Because it doesn't matter what situation you're in, if you are connected to the divine, you are not a prisoner. It doesn't matter if you're in the gulag, you are not a prisoner. It doesn't matter if you're deathbed, you're not a slave to death and mortality. It's transcendent. Alright? So those are some reasons my kids aren't going to be slaves. I mean, they're not going to have these big loans sitting about them. They're not going to be slaves to loan sharks. They're not going to be slaves to like either or options, like you go get this job or you become, this whatever career dude. There's going to be other options in there. Am I going to start my own business? Whatever. They're going to have the freedom which comes from hard, steady discipline and development of skills. That will give them the freedom to choose between many good options instead of what most people get, which is like some things that they don't really care about either. And they're thrown into, like, I don't have any options, it's hopeless. And off they go. And where do they end up? You know where they end up. They end up working. They end up depressed. They end up having less children than I wanted to. All these things. They end up a little bit more like slaves. All right. So I hope everything's well with you. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I'm just saying I'm not raising any slaves. All right? They're gonna have chores. They're gonna know how to do stuff. They're not gonna be a slave to being fearful of things. I'm not raising slaves.